they're going to keep pushing and pushing until something stops them. And then yesterday, we saw an absolutely chilling story out of Michigan, where immigration agents detained and demanded to search the phone of an American citizen at the Detroit airport after he returned from a vacation with his wife and 2 daughters. His name is Amir Makhlid, and he broke no laws. He's a lawyer himself, and his only infraction, at least as far as we can tell in the eyes of the Trump administration, appears to be that he represents a pro-Palestinian demonstrator who was arrested at the University of Michigan last year.
Wait a minute. So he's not in any protest or anything. He just supports Palestine, and they want to search his phone without warrant, I assume, because if it was like they had a warrant or something like that, there wouldn't be an issue, right?
And that attorney, Amir Makhlid, joins me now. Mr. Makhlid, it's great to have you in the program. Just take me through, I think you were on a vacation in the Dominican Republic. You land in Detroit. You got to go through customs. What happens next?
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me, Chris. Well, what happens next is when I get to the immigration checkpoint and I speak to a passport officer, they ran my passport, which happens routinely whenever you're coming in through the border. But the strange part is the agent looked up and looked to another government officer and asked if the TTRT team was available. And I didn't recognize that acronym, so I did a quick Google search while I was just standing at the desk there. And it turns out that term meant the Tactical Terrorism Response Team, which, you know, dropped my heart into my stomach. I almost nearly hit the floor thinking about.
Okay. Okay, he's not even an immigrant or anything like that. He's an American citizen who was on a vacation. This sounds hard to believe. Let's go, but let's see what happens. But this is sounds like absurd to me, I think.
Heck, that could be about. And so I looked over at my wife and I said, honey, they're gonna take me in for questioning. I'm pretty confident that they're gonna ask me to step into an interview room. And lo and behold, you know, another agent comes out and says, sir, follow me. And so as I'm walking into the interview room, I asked them, well, are my wife and children free to leave? And they said yes. So my wife and kids waited outside for nearly 2 hours while I was being interrogated by Customs and Border Patrol protection officers.
Yeah, interrogated for what? That is something I don't understand. Why is he being interrogated for, like, supporting a movement? If that's what it's all about, I don't understand that. There must be something else. There must be something else.
What's interesting in this situation is that as I was sitting in an interview room, a plain-clothed agent who wouldn't identify himself to me asked me if, you know, I was carrying my cell phone. And I said yes. And he says, well, first off, let me just say this. We know who you are. We know that you're an attorney. And we know that you represent some high-profile clients. And the only high-profile case that I'm involved in right now is the representation of a young lady named Samantha Lewis. And she's involved at the University of Michigan and was engaged in political speech and protesting against the war in Gaza. And in our defense, we're going after the criminalization of free speech in the University of Michigan case. And so we've made a lot of public remarks about that topic, and we stood tall with our clients on that issue.
So they ran his background and they didn't like his remarks about that case or something?
As this conversation with this agent was going, he said, listen, he hands me a pamphlet which had a federal statute on it and said, listen, we're allowed to take your phone, even if you're an American citizen, and we can hold it for several days or weeks even, and then give it back to you once we're done going through it. Or you can comply with us right now, give us the password, and let us go through it. And I said to them, well, guys, you already know, there's 2 agents in the room, you already know that I'm an attorney, and you
Yeah, he's an attorney and he knows there's no such law to give you a personal phone.
know that a substantial amount of my work is going to be on my phone. And in these days, everything's
Yeah.
electronic anyways.
Right.
You know, there's nothing left to paper filings in court. I have my entire, all my emails, my text messages, all my files, my work product. It's all contained in my phone. And so I tell them everything that's in my phone could be considered work privilege and is attorney-client privilege. You have no right or authority to go through the contents of my phone, especially
Okay.
because you know I'm an attorney, and I'm not giving you that unfettered access to my phone. They said, listen, we
Yeah.
can
So I think this is what they are trying to do, because if he gives them the access willingly, there'll be no problem. So that's what they're trying, because they know the other way they cannot get access. Like they could get sued. That's what they are trying to do, I'm assuming.
could do this two ways. Either we could take your phone, and you're not going to have a phone for several days, or you can just give us the access. I said, I'm not giving you the access when I have privileged communications on my cell phone.
Yep.
Well, that charge, you know, put him in a position where he had to go speak to his supervisor. He comes back several minutes later and says, why don't you write down, he gave me a legal pad, why don't you write down what it is that you feel is privileged, and we won't go through that stuff, we'll go through everything else. I said, what kind of a futile exercise would that be? I've got to go through, nearly 15 years of communications and emails and files to say this is privileged and this isn't? I said, that's ridiculous. It's an impossibility to go through.
Even you know, guys, what I think is, even if it's like he didn't have anything work related on that phone, I think it would be like not allowed to give up his phone's access. That's what I think. He shouldn't have to give his phone without like a warrant or something like that. They can't go through his phone. That's why they are trying all these tactics.
Through all that stuff. So we came after, I mean, this is going on for nearly an hour and a half. We came to the final pass. He said, listen, again, if you want to leave here with your phone, you're going to have to give us access.
Right.
And so they asked me, why don't you just show us the contacts in your phone? They wanted to know who my contacts were. They wanted to do a data dump of all the contacts in my phone. And I said, well, and he said, do you believe that that's privileged information? I said, it very well could be, but, you know, I don't want you to take my phone away from me either. Right. So I agreed to let them see my contacts only. And so once they did that, they came back and wanted to question. They gave me a list about 5 or 6 names of contacts that were on my phone and wanted to know how I was associated with these.
Yeah. So he's trying to de-escalate the situation to keep his phone or something like that, because even if like they don't have like access to it, if they keep the phone, it would be like weeks in court before he gets it, and I don't think the judge will punish them too hard. So he knows his court system, and he's trying to like mitigate the situation. Right? Let's see. But I still think shouldn't have given them access, even for the contacts.
These folks, what's my relationship to them? You know, where did I meet them? How did I know? And I said, Lat, now you're getting too far. Everybody that's in my phone is either going to be a family member, a friend, or a client.
Right.
Yep.
And that's the only information I'm going to give you.
Wait,
to me,
let me just for 1 second. Did they say who they were? Was it Customs and Border Patrol? Did they like say who they were? And did they give you a top line up the front who said, "We've pulled you aside because of X"?
Well, they wouldn't tell me why they stopped me. They did tell me, and they were prepared. So it wasn't random. This is not something where I was just randomly selected.
Right.
They knew who I was. They knew my history. They knew I had represented high-profile cases.
So it's something related to that case, I assume. Let's see. This is interesting.
Is they told me we looked you up and they were ready to ask me pointed
Yeah,
questions about certain things. And because he brought up the high-profile case, it led me to believe that they're targeting me specifically because I've taken up the defense for this young lady, Miss Samantha Lewis.
that's what anyone would assume in that situation, right? Because he knows what cases he is representing, and that's the only case that of that significance. So yeah, they're obviously targeting him because of that case.
And to me, I was really appalled by that apparent overreach of the government at this point. And they were Customs and Border Protection agents, just wearing
Yeah.
plain clothes. He showed me a badge, but he wouldn't tell me his name.
And I mean, we should be clear here that like the normal sort of, sort of protocol of rights are different at the border.
Well, I thought they could cannot detain someone without articulating a crime or something. And he's saying like they wouldn't even know, they wouldn't even tell him why he's being questioned. So, doesn't that like against the law? I think it is.
Right, that they can sort of ask anyone anything they want, essentially, at the border. Had you ever had an interaction like this before, where you were questioned, but ever had anyone in law enforcement like mention your clients as like the possible motive?
I've never been interviewed at the border. I've gone and traveled, and they knew that I've traveled
Possible
extensively
motive.
outside.
That was a word is the key, like a possible motive, because they're not explaining to him what is the reason of like this questioning. So looks like they're trying to find yeah, that's a good point he got, because like they're to me from this conversation it sounds like they're trying to find a reason, like to get access to the content on his phone and detain him.
Out of the country. And I just, as of recent as December, on Christmas break, we took another family trip to Mexico. I came back and nobody stopped us. But that was not during the Trump administration.
Right.
This is the distinction in this situation. We now have a new administration who's made it very clear that they're going to attack attorneys who are taking on, cases that are against the interests of what this current administration believes in. We've seen the memos that they've put out for immigration attorneys, and I'm not a practicing immigration lawyer, but it's disturbing that they want to sanction immigration attorneys for cases that they would deem to be frivolous if they're helping people who are seeking asylum, or attacking those D.C. law firms and the executive orders. So we're seeing a
What the
chilling
hell,
effect
man?
on not just individuals and their rights,
What the
but
fuck
also
is
on the
going
attorneys
on?
representing these individuals.
Yeah, and
I don't understand what they're trying to achieve, like threatening attorneys of all people. Like, out of all people, you are targeting the person who knows the law ins and outs. What the hell?
just want to be clear here. DHS has not offered any rationale here. So they've been a black box in terms of what was going on. They might come out publicly with some other account of why this happened. That wasn't about who you're representing. But your account suggests at least that was someone's friend of mine, Amir Maklad, who's an attorney in Detroit, who was questioned at length in part about the clients he represents, an American citizen. Thank you so much for making time tonight, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is bizarre. So, is he suing them or not? If what he's saying that is all that happens, he should be able to sue them, right? Okay, let's see what the comment has to say. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I'm not going to pretend that I'm important enough to be anybody, but they're clearly targeting lawyers who tell them no. I'm supposed to leave the country on my honeymoon later this year. Am I flagged in a database somewhere as a potential enemy to the state, potential to be interrogated in form of harassment? I don't know. A few years ago, I would have laughed at the prospect, but now the Trump regime has. This is seriously fucked up. No, yeah, I don't see what the hell is going on. What are they trying to achieve by suppressing lawyers like this? Yeah, they should be sued, in my opinion. They should be sued and like at least those officers that detained him, or better yet, sue that department.